Everyone, to yet another webinar from Help Systems. This topic today is how to move from legacy HA to robot HA in 30 days. You know, we at Help Systems realize that HA doesn't have to be so expensive and it doesn't have to be so complicated, and hence the discussion on why robot HA may be a good fit for you. Today, I'm joined by one of my colleagues, Mark Amacher. Mark, what do you do for Help Systems?
Hey, Tom. I've been with Help Systems about 5 years, and I install robot HA and other robot type tools at customer
Awesome.
sites.
And I know you have a customer background too. So you've been on IBM I, AS400, iSeries, whatever you want to call it, for years, and a long-time Help Systems customer, right?
Yeah, I've been a Help Systems customer since the 90s.
Wow.
And I think
Okay.
at that point, I think I was bugging you about not robot HA, but an HA tool. I was wondering if Help Systems was ever going to have one. And here we
Yeah,
are.
I can remember the conversations, and it just never seemed to work out for us. But now, 6 years ago, we got into HA. And for those who don't know me, I'm Tom Huntington. I'm our Executive Vice President of Technical Solutions at Help Systems, longtime employee of Help Systems, and actually one of the subject matter experts here on journaling, because I used it way back in my System 38 days even. And so once you learn something and you learn it through the School of Hard Knocks, you never forget about it. So I'm excited here to help people talk about, journaling replication, hardware replication, DB2 mirror. I talk about everything related to this area, even backups and virtual tape libraries. So a lot of conversations around that. And if you need one of those conversations, I'll certainly help educate you on this area on IBM I. So our agenda today is pretty short. We have what is robot HA? I'll cover that part. Then Mark's going to help talk about how can we switch you in 30 days, or what are we talking about when we say that. We're going to do a live demo. I should really have that on the agenda. And then we're going to talk next steps if you want to move on with robot HA. So robot HA is a product that we acquired 6 years ago. We've done several releases to it. We've run it through our QA process, so we've improved the quality of the product. We've added additional functionality, of course, along the way. But this is, the founding product existed 25 years ago, and it really started out as an object distribution tool used by a lot of large organizations with change control. When remote journaling came out, remote journaling was added, and the rest is history. Help Systems has been working on this product ever since. So this is a real-time data replication, high availability product using local and remote journaling. It also does object replication. It has self-monitoring, self-healing, very easy to administer and navigate, which is one of the value propositions that we have out there. We also feel it's cost effective. It is proven technology, it's been around for a while. Certainly helps you out with your high availability plans. We also integrate with Power HA. We also have people that are replicating on-premise to the cloud. We have customers that are using us to do data replication, moving data from one partition to multiple partitions, data warehouse on one partition, and on another partition they're doing website type stuff. So I'm replicating from one to the other. And of course, people do their backups on their secondary system. They use this for system maintenance. They use this for system migration. We're really helping customers in a lot of different ways related to high availability, DR, backups, that kind of thing. So as I said, we use local and remote journaling. And so the little education with that is that people need to know that physical files, data queues, data areas, and IFS are truly the types of objects that go through journaling in a real time. So if you look at this screen here, what happens is you come into robot HA, you create a library, we create a journal, we create a remote journal, and we start up the apply process over on the target system. As data changes, it immediately through nanoseconds end up over on the target system. However, some objects are not journaled. So we take a little different approach than some of the other replication products. We use the Save Change Object APIs, which are very efficient to pick up on net new objects. We save them to a save file. We use our TCP/IP socket programs to send them over and restore them to your library. And we're doing that in an interval process. Sometimes customers get confused between the interval process and real time. Data is always real time. Interval objects are for objects that are not journaled. Now, we also use the Q Audit Journal, which is, of course, as you know, for security purposes, which is always a great conversation around security. But we use it for authorization lists, object authorities, user profiles. Again, this is an interval process. I should really add that to the screen here. And then the other thing we do is we want to make sure you're ready for a role swap. So we are copying your TCP/IP configuration, your schedule entries, your web definitions, triggers, constraints, etc., putting those into save files and physical files, also in an interval process. And we're using, again, that same socket conversation, TCP/IP conversation, to send that information over to the target. With data or logical replication, production and the backup server are both active. These are live systems, all right? Now, the other thing that we found in getting into this space is that not a lot of people are doing role swaps. We wanna make sure that you're doing a role swap. Even from one of the competitors' own study guide that survey they were doing, only 10% of their customers were doing role swaps on an active basis. So once a year is enough. Twice a year is great. Just depends upon the vulnerabilities that you have. So with a full role swap, we're running something from our menu system on the production side, and we're running something on the target side to do the full role swap. Again, this is a planned role swap, so we want to do it as clean as possible. These are typically taking 15 to 20 minutes. I know Mark has done some in 5 minutes. I know he has 1 or 2 customers that take as long as an hour to do because of some of the things that they have in their environment, namely constraints and triggers are what causes problems. Now, the other thing, we typically work with a DNS name server so that we're not switching IP addresses. We're just changing the name and what IP address it's associated with, and the system takes care of it, or the network, I should say, takes care of it. Now, to step you into doing a full role swap, we also do a role swap while active, or virtual role swap. People talk about this. Production continues to run as is. Robot HA on the production system is running. Journaling is still in place, local and remote journaling. The transactions are ending up on the target side. We're basically suspending the apply process so that your end users can look at the data, can query the data. We usually don't recommend updating the data because then we got to refresh the data, and it's just a lot cleaner to keep it that way. But the purpose of this is, can I load up my application? Could I do business from there in the test while active? When we do the full role swap, then yes, we want you to start changing data, of course, things like that, because we're going to switch the journaling around and point it to the other direction. So test while active, target system really is simulated to become production, and users come into it that way. Now, the other thing to think about is some benefits with Robot HA. Probably one of the #1 things we hear from our customers is, wow, this is a lot easier to navigate and understand. And we're like, well, yeah, that shouldn't be that difficult. And I think one of the reasons is we have one library, we have a journal, we have journal receivers to it. It's much easier if you know the library name, you know the name of the journal. The other thing is we automate the process of monitoring the status replication, and we're self-healing. One of the products we've replaced is because it doesn't have a self-healing process. If communication drops, it drops. We automatically restart it because of those intervals. Another great thing about Help Systems is we have monitoring tools that can monitor everything so that we can give you monitoring of one central screen for everything from QSys Opera to performance with Halcyon and the robot products. Also, our customer support is global. We have people in the US, Europe, and Australia. They're very knowledgeable about the Help Systems products. The same person helping you with Robot Schedule is probably going to be the person helping you with Robot HA. And then, of course, our services team that Mark is part of can help you with role swaps, and they can help you out with training. We really, at the end of the day, want you to own the product, but also to realize we're here to help you with role swaps, role swap while active, setting the product up. That's what our services team does. So how can we say that we can do this in 30 days? In reality, it's a 30-day period of time, and we're going to not be working 30 days straight. We're probably only going to be working, maybe 20 to 40 hours, depending upon the size of your system, the complications, etc. We typically find, though, with migrating from an existing solution is actually more complicated than a net new customer. So we have to do planning, we have to do discovery, we have to do setup, we have to do the takeover process, and then the final thing we're doing is follow up. And to help you out with this, we turn it over to Mark to talk a little bit about the planning phase. What are you doing during the planning phase, Mark?
You bet. Thanks, Tom. So the main thing is to know is when do you need to get it converted by? A lot of times there's a trigger on this. Maybe it's the software vendor's maintenance is due, and they give you a 30-day notice, and so you need to get it done before then. But there's other business decisions that have to happen. Maybe it's end of year or whatever. But so when do we need to get it converted? That's a big thing to communicate. Then we build out a timeline for that conversion, identify the team members that'll be involved, and then discuss what data, what applications need to be converted. How many pairs are we talking about? And then we come up with an amount of hours that it's going to take to do all the work.
Yeah, and I think it's important too is that during planning, we talk about, are you happy with your current setup? Are there new things that we need to consider? So we're always looking to make it better. So what about the
Right.
discovery process, Mark? What is this?
Yeah, so the discovery process is when we basically start running reports of what your existing setup looks like. So we install the Robot HA product, but don't configure it. We're just getting it out there for the library at this point to have all the reports that we run. It's like around 10 reports that we like to run. We like to look at triggers and constraints, existing journaling, where objects are journaled to, libraries, library sizes, things like that. So it's about looking at what exists today. And if you have MIMIX installed, we do have a conversion tool that will help us with building the Robot HA rules. So it makes it a little bit quicker there. All right,
Yeah,
so again, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Tom.
I was just
I'm
going to
gonna
say,
say,
so it's important that we understand your journaling, right? And everything else. So
right,
maybe you can kind of walk through why some of these things are important.
yeah, and really we have reports for all these. So that's, again, the journaling reports, triggers and constraints. We talk about commitment control. We do have a report that pulls that. We need to know what objects are being omitted. So a lot of times you'll have an application on a system that needs to have data areas omitted from replication because it has license key information, things like that in there. Or maybe there's work files that need to be omitted, things like that. We'd like to talk about the volume, talk about IFS to see how much IFS needs to be replicated.
I always
Yeah,
like to
things
know
like that.
too, are there any current problems with the incumbent solution so that, we're not switching into a problem, right? So we want to know, what those issues are and how we can make them better and eliminate them. And that's something that we do along the way. And then, the whole purpose behind sizing this is really about knowing what the effort is and how many hours we need to make sure, the discovery process will help us identify if it's going to take longer than we think. But, Mark and team have gotten pretty good. You know, they're comfortable with the process and the number of hours. So what about setup? What are we doing in the setup phase?
Yep. So Robot HA by nature is a one library to one journal type application. We're not locked into that, but that is I would call it the best practice for our product. And so we create the rules. We call them sync attributes for each library. Again, if MIMIX is in play, then we can use our transition tool to transition the MIMIX rules into our application, save some time. Review all the rules for omits and includes and make sure that it's set up right. And then talk about before and after image journaling. So, especially if a customer uses commitment control, they will have both images, the before image and the after images. By default, Robot HA and other tools just require after images. All right, the next thing we do is set up the weekly audit. So make sure that your data is being compared on a regular basis and reports are being run. So there's also a daily check report that can be emailed out to you every day or 3 times a day or however many times you want it to let you know how the product is doing health-wise. And then the last thing, just to note in the setup is if your system is using journal caching, we want to make sure that we have that turned on too so that things get applied faster and changes can be transferred faster.
Yeah, and that's free now with 7.5. IBM is including journal caching. It's an API that you used to have to pay for. It's license program number 42, and it's free with 7.4, 7.3, and 7.5 now. So that's a really good thing. And the other thing I hear a lot of when we're transitioning customers is, how often do you have to run your audits? I'm used to running MIMIX audits or other audits on a daily basis. And quite honestly, we try to eliminate the number of audits. We don't necessarily look at that as a good feature. Yes, you need to do the compares and stuff like that. But if you're having to run an audit every single day and you're afraid you're out of sync every single day, then that's probably why you're not doing role swaps. I mean, it's, to me, the product that you have is not, hence the word why we say legacy, because I think that some of those practices are legacy practices. I don't know what you think about that, Mark, but that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, we like to run it once a week, during a slow period to make sure everything is still perfect. And then obviously the product has self-healing functionality. So if something is not right, then it just fixes it.
And then the takeover process. What do you mean by takeover, Mark? What are we doing here?
Yeah, so especially if there's a product already there, we'd like to take over where the data is. So if there's an existing product and you feel comfortable about the data on the backup system, then we can say, okay, we're going to stop everything, bring everything, QES the system, bring everything down, and then just put our rules in and take the other rules out and take over journaling and go from that point forward. It's usually a 2 to 4 hour process. We can build our rules ahead of time and then just turn them on at the point of the takeover. And then after everything is up and running, then we would run reports again to make sure that everything is the way we think it's supposed to be. And if not, then the product will fix it.
Awesome. So as you can see, then the next thing, that's the next phase for us, is follow up, right? We want to make sure that we check in with you after we've done the takeover, make sure that there's no errors. Maybe we need to now omit some additional objects. We do find sometimes that happens. Review the audits, compares, make sure you're happy with that. Make sure that the notification process is set up so that you're getting notified. You're getting that handy little report, or you're getting a notification saying, hey, there's no errors. And then we want to prepare for role swaps. We want to start talking about when you're going to do your full role swap. And again, our services team can help you out through your first role swap, the second, the third, the fourth, whatever you want to do there. Obviously, again, our goal is to have you own the process, and it's your thing. Did I miss anything on follow-up, Mark?
No, I like to just stress that role swap while active, we always like to do that before we do a full role swap. Just gives us an idea of how the product is working with your environment. And you get some ideas on timings.
Perfect, perfect. Well, at this point, we're going to do a live demo, Mark. I'm going to turn it over to you so people can see a little bit what you do during this transition period, and you talk through why you do what you do. So here you go. You should be presenter now. And we should see your screen in a little bit. I see your screen. So it looks like you got a spreadsheet and a green screen. So first of all, I
Yep.
know you got, what's a spreadsheet for? What are you doing here?
Yep. So the spreadsheet is this is the result of or an example of a result of some of our reports that we run. So one of them we run as a library report, and that library report shows the library names, the sizes, number of objects, average size, some things like that. So we like to do our analysis and work through that report. And so the report is a spool file in the IBMI. We usually take it over to a PC and put it into a spreadsheet because it's easier to work with in a spreadsheet. So then we will take that and we will create a list of like libraries that will be set up the same way. Generally for a customer, about 80% of your libraries are set up the default way where there's no what we call sets. They all get up, they have one journal, one library, they're all set up the same way. So we'll create that spreadsheet of those. And in this example, Tom, I'm just going to do 4 of them. As you know, you may have hundreds of libraries on your system, and
Or a
setting these
thousand?
all up, or thousands, right? But setting those up manually would be extremely tedious. So today I'm just going to show you a quick example of how we have some automation that will build those rules for you. And so we're automating the build of the configuration basically. So in the example, this is our 4 libraries, new lib 1, 2, 3, and 4. To save time, I've already sent this file back up to the IBMI using Navigator, and it just uses green buttons up here. You have to build a file in it and send it up. But I've sent it up already. It's called New Lives. And you know what? Why don't I just do this? Show you that the file's up here and that it has the 4 records in it.
Yeah, so Mark's just using our Easy View product, kind of similar to DVU to see the file. Yep.
So here's our 4 libraries that are built. All right, and then just to make sure I'm in the product yet. All right, so here is our sync attribute screen, and I'm going to page up, and you'll see there's no libraries in here called new lib. They would be right after this MAMACHER one. So going back out here, using our command set RSF-SA, prompt that, put in the name of the file that contains the list, so it's new libs. It's in my library. Where these are going to go to our backup. You could omit libraries if you see some on here that you don't want, but usually if you're working in a spreadsheet, you've already cleaned it up anyways. And then the last thing that's really required is the name of the field that this needs to look at. All right, we're going to choose all defaults for the rest of our sync setup.
But
However,
if we look at some of these, Mark, I would add, you know, we use a journal lib, and we have whether or not Robot HA manages the journals, the days to keep the journals, fix objects using wrong journals. Those are all things that we can work with. Triggers, we turn those off. Let's see, standby journals, you might be familiar with that concept. We also do that. That's just to point out a few things that we have there.
Yeah, there's 4 pages of things that you can set up for our product. So like I said, today we're just going to take the defaults on everything, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter key, and it's going to start building those sync attributes.
Awesome. Okay. Look at that.
Change for 4 attributes, F3 out of this, and we can now see if I refresh my screen, we have new lib 1, 2, 3, 4.
And you can position up there too. So, right, if you go up to the library thing.
Well, I just hit the wrong key.
I've done that before.
So there's our 4 libraries at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then basically, when we go to start it for the first time, let's pretend that we have another product in place. We would just go down here, the F10 key, change this to manual, and this to reset, and hit enter, and it will should sync up that library really quick. And we got the last sync time right there. Basically, it left all the data on the backup system in place and started us new. So going forward, libraries in Robot HA.
So if I think about that, Mark, so what that's doing is it's going out and saying, okay, we're going to move new lib 1 to new lib 1 on the target system, but new lib 1 already exists on both the source and target. So all we're going to do here is have Robot HA rip through new lib 1 on the source side and point to all the physical files that are being journaled to the new lib journal in journal lib. All right, okay. And then the other thing is that you can do this process of running that set RSF-SA command. You could run that on a week or 2 weeks beforehand, get the rules all set up the way you want, and then when it comes to takeover, that's when you're doing option 8. Is that correct? Is that a fair way of looking at that?
Yeah, the option 8 is the first time run of the sync attribute. Option 8 runs the sync attribute always, but the first time is the critical time when it would tell you, or give you the option of saying that the data on the backup system is golden.
Yeah, and so that's really the takeover process. So that's the process where you know, it might run for, depending upon how many objects, how many physical files, how big your libraries are, things like that. You know, the takeover process of switching from, let's just say, Itera or MIMIX or whatever the product may be to Robot HA, we're going to go through and point those physical files to a new journal receiver, and take over from that spot forward. That's what we just did when we did option 8.
Right.
All right, cool. Very good. Any other tips on this process today.
No, I just wanted to show you how easy it is to set up a large group of sync attributes.
So again, your
it's very
spreadsheet
easy.
can have as many libraries as you want, right?
Yep.
Very good. Okay, well, thank you, Mark. That was a great demo. Let me switch back over to the PowerPoint here, and we'll wrap this up and we'll take your questions. So I'm gonna, okay. So nice demo on that, Mark. I appreciate that. Obviously, there's more things that we could show of the product if you want to do a proof of concept yourself and install us on some of your test partitions. So you'll see Robot HA is affordable. You have to talk to your sales representative. Like a lot of times we see these switchovers happening because somebody's getting their annual maintenance or they're doing a hardware upgrade and they're seeing a big bill. That's kind of what happens. Robot HA is easy to implement. The other thing we just see is customers, they're unhappy with their complicated environment they have. It's what I would call almost spaghetti code in the HA world. And so it's hard to implement, hard to maintain. Our services team is very much so knowledgeable, ready here to assist you to get you started. So at this point, questions. One of the first questions we have is from Bob. He's wondering about the audit journal and how we manage the audit journal. I see you use it, we talked about it. And Bob, that's a great question. It's something that's really important. And Mark, I do a lot more discussions around security, so I'll take that question.
Okay.
The important thing here is we don't want to remove security entries from your system any faster than you need them for audit purposes, right? Q Audit Journal is basically the chronological log of what's happening security-wise on your system. So Robot HA can maintain that. But if we're going to maintain that, you have to tell us how long you want those journal receivers around from a security perspective, because our default is basically we'll delete the journal receiver after we're done with it from an HA perspective. You probably don't want that in today's world of security. You probably want 60 days, 6 months maybe worth of Q Audit Journal. Some cases people might need it for a whole year. You might even want to back those off, which I would recommend you do too. So anyways, that's, Q Audit Journal is used by profiles, authorization lists, object authorities, spool files. I think that's kind of it for Robot HA. So Mark, the other question is, I noticed on the command that you were using when you did the set RSF SA, do I have to use a text file? Could I use ELF files? Can I do other things to bring in those libraries?
Yeah, you can use an out file. You can use a physical file that's already on your system. Either one of those are options. I personally just find it easier to work on an Excel document on a different system, and that way you can email it around and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think the important point there is that this is a planning process that you're going through, and with the spreadsheet, it's a lot easier to kind of communicate what we're bringing over, why we're doing what we're doing, and I think that's why Mark and the services team prefer that. Well,
Yep.
that's it for our questions today. I want to thank you, Mark, for doing a great demo. I want to remind people that we're Help Systems, and we have all these other robot products from scheduling to monitoring, now HA. Don't forget about performance capacity planning. We do that for customers with Performance Navigator, monitoring systems, reporting systems. And then, as I said earlier, security is on everybody's mind. We help you out with that area, scanning for systems with our free security scan. We do full risk assessments, penetration testing on IBMI, multi-factor authentication, encryption for IBMI, which is another interesting topic with HA, antivirus and ransomware. Reminder that HA may not help you in that regards because we're actually going to replicate the virus or replicate the ransomware potentially from one server to another. So our PowerTech AV product is a great protection from both of those because it does do ransomware protection on IBMI, and so they don't get replicated. Make sure, in other words, you still need a good backup policy when you're using HA type technology. So at that, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mark, for doing such a great live demo. And you guys make it a great day, and we'll see you on a future Help Systems webinar. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, Tom.
Bye-bye.